You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we've got a pretty cataclysmic move here as far as the Department of Justice is concerned, something pretty unexpected from a Trump appointee. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, Brian, the resistance from within Donald Trump's Department of Justice is growing. The acting United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office, that's the field office of the Department of Justice that's located up in Manhattan, a woman named Danielle Sassoon just resigned. Why did she resign? Because one of Donald Trump's attack dogs, a guy named Emil Bove, one of the high officials down at the Department of Justice, also a former criminal defense attorney for Donald Trump, told U.S. Attorney Sassoon to dismiss a pending prosecution, a public corruption prosecution against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Now, you know, this was a big old prosecution. A 57-page indictment had been handed down for, really alarming political corruption by Mayor Adams. And there was a trial date coming up in April. And Donald Trump's DOJ leadership, this is almost too much to imagine, told the U.S. Attorney in New York, you're going to dismiss the case, not because there is a deficiency in the evidence, but because we want Mayor Adams to be in a position to help the Trump administration with its priorities and its policies. I mean, this is corruption in the harsh light of day, dismissing a pending criminal case against a high government official so that person could help Donald Trump and his goals and priorities. And U.S. Attorney Sassoon said, hell no, I'm not doing it. I resign. Then after that, Brian, they tried to take that case and move it down to Washington, D.C., at least the supervision of that case, to a unit called the Public Integrity Section. And they tried to make them basically do Donald Trump's dirty work. And the two top officials in the Public Integrity Section in Washington, D.C., also said, hell no, we resign. This, feels a lot like the old Saturday Night Massacre during the Nixon days, during the Watergate debacle, when he tried to get people to do his dirty work for him, and they resigned one after another after another. That's what we're seeing now. The good career prosecutors who take their oath of office seriously, who understand their responsibility to prosecute without fear, without favor, and most importantly, without politics, are saying, we will not do Donald Trump's dirty work or the dirty work of his leadership at the Department of Justice. We are out. We're standing on principle. This is a really important development.
Glenn, I understand that you frame this as the resistance against the Trump administration growing, but at the same time, you have these good prosecutors, people who are actually willing to stand up to Trump, but when they resign, aren't they just self-selecting out? Aren't they making it so that they're just going to be replaced by somebody who will do Trump's bidding, and so we're left worse off than we were had they just opted to stay?
No, they're taking a public stance. They're saying we will not do what a corrupt president or the corrupt officials he is installing at the top of the Department of Justice are telling us to do. We will not do it. We will speak out. We will speak with resignations. We will speak with our feet because we are leaving. This is the word that has to get out. Some people could say, well, aren't they just kind of obeying? Not really. Yes, they could stay there and be fired the next day, but it is the message. It's not the way that they leave the Department of Justice. It's the message that they are sending by standing up to, this attempt to weaponize. Yes, I'm going to go there. Weaponize the Department of Justice. And Brian, here is the most egregious part of all of this, because this guy, Emil Bove, remember his name, one of Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorneys, and that name should go down in the history books in infamy. Let me tell you what he did. The first thing he did a couple of days ago was he ordered U.S. Attorney Sassoon to drop the case against Eric Adams, not for evidentiary reasons, but for political reasons. And here is what he told her when he ordered her to drop the case a couple of days ago. This in no way calls into question the integrity and efforts of the prosecutors working on the case, nor Ms. Sassoon's efforts in leading them. And Brian, not 2 days later, when she resigned, rather than do, Emile Bove's unethical ask, here's what Emile Bove said about her today. Mr. Bove, in accepting Ms. Sassoon's resignation, informed her that the prosecutors who worked on the case, the Eric Adams case, were being placed on administrative leave and would be investigated by the Attorney General and the Justice Department's internal investigative arm. He told Ms. Sassoon both bodies would also evaluate her conduct. This is retaliation and retribution that would make, Kim Jong-un, the president of North Korea, blush, because it's so flagrant, it's so transparent, it is so out in the open, in the harsh light of day. He says, do what I'm telling you to do. Get rid of the Adams case for political reasons, not legal or evidentiary reasons, and everything's going to be okay, and all the prosecutors who worked on the case are going to be okay. When she resigns, he says, now we're investigating all of y'all. They really need to consider renaming, at least temporarily, the Department of Justice, because the justice is vanishing.
Glenn, by virtue of the fact that Emile Bove pretty much explained that he was going to retaliate against these folks because they weren't willing to do Trump's corrupt bidding, does this effort feel like it backfired, so that in the sense that these folks can then bring about a wrongful termination suit, or join in on maybe pending wrongful termination class action suits that exist right now?
Yeah, it's a great point. Emile Bove kind of stepped in it. He doesn't appear to be a real strategic thinker, because when you put on the public record, one, I want you to dismiss a case based on politics and not evidence. I mean, right there, you're kind of admitting your own corruption and unethical behavior, but then he adds insult to his own injury. These are self-inflicted wounds. When he says, if you do what I say, you're going to be fine. But when she resigns, now you and your whole team are going to be investigated for misconduct. I mean, I don't know if this would support a wrongful termination suit, because the reality is Ms. Sassoon resigned rather than waiting to be wrongfully terminated. But I'll tell you, I do know that it's not going to look good for Emile Bove. And importantly, Brian, with every overreach and every transparently unethical or corrupt act by Donald Trump and his DOJ leadership, I believe they are turning individuals and organizations and public sentiment against them. I don't think any of this is sustainable. I don't think they're going to win this game that they are playing in the long run. So, listen, we cannot expect good decisions out of the Trump administration or the DOJ leadership. That's become clear. You know what? Bring on all the bad decisions, because it's going to galvanize opinion and support against what you're trying to do to the federal government.
Glenn, I don't want to bury the lead here, but I think it's also important to note that Ms. Sassoon clerked for Antonin Scalia, was a member of the Federalist Society, and was handpicked by Trump to lead the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's why she's the acting U.S. Attorney in Manhattan. So it's not like this is some crunchy liberal, right? This is not like somebody that they were trying to root out all along. She was put there expressly because she is a Republican. And so for even somebody like her to recognize that the Overton window has shifted too far to the right, that what they're seeking to do is just perpetuate this kind of lawless behavior. What is your reaction to that, given the fact that this is somebody, again, who was put there expressly to do what she's refusing to do right now?
Yeah, it's a great point. I don't think anybody, given her conservative bona fides, as you just laid out, clerking for one of the most conservative Supreme Court justices in recent history, Antonin Scalia, and being a member of the Federalist Society. I want to talk about that piece again in a minute. A very conservative legal organization. Really hard to paint her as an angry Democrat, right?
Well, hard.
Trump will try.
Not to say that they won't try, exactly.
Yeah, Trump will try. But by referencing what her ideology might be, what her political leanings might be, I am not suggesting that she brings any of that with her to her work as a career federal prosecutor or as acting U.S. attorney. In fact, I admire the stand she took against Trump and the top brass at the Department of Justice. But here's the thing, Brian. The Federalist Society, yes, it is very conservative, but I wonder how they will feel about one of their own members. She's a member of the Federalist Society being retaliated against in the most corrupt and unethical way imaginable. That's what I'm talking about when I say this kind of conduct by Donald Trump and his top officials at the Department of Justice will turn individuals and organizations and public opinion against Trump and company, because this is no way to run a Department of Justice. Take politics out of the calculus entirely, conservative, liberal, independent, it doesn't matter. This is wrong, and I have a feeling the Federalist Society, I can't speak for them, will look at what was just done to one of their members and say, are you flippin' kidding me? No, 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 no. This has to be addressed and rectified.
And finally, Glenn, in terms of Eric Adams being able to be let off by virtue of what Trump is clearly hell-bent on doing, if this becomes a situation where the federal government is no longer willing to prosecute him, is it something where we can see the state pick up the slack from where the federal government is going to leave off?
Yeah, just ask Steve Bannon, because Steve Bannon committed crimes of fraud when he came up with this bogus We Build the Wall Foundation and bilked what I believe are Trump supporters out of their money, right?
Yep,
He was
exactly.
indicted federally, but Donald Trump swooped in and pardoned him for stealing from Donald Trump's own supporters. That doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Pardoned him in the federal prosecution, and the state court, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office said, yeah, not so fast, Steve, because you also violated New York state law. And what did we just see? Steve Bannon plead guilty to a felony, a scheme to defraud in the first degree in violation of New York law. Well, hold on tight, Mayor Adams, because you may have the same fate coming at you that Steve Bannon just suffered. So I think, generally speaking, state prosecutors and attorneys general around the country may have to continue to pick up the slack that is, being left by Donald Trump's Department of Justice being unwilling to enforce the law without fear or favor. And let me just finish with this, Brian, because when Emil Bove said, I want the case dismissed against Eric Adams, but not because of the evidence. By all accounts, the evidence that he committed crimes is quite strong, and this was a very triable case. You know what signal they were sending? They said, we're going to dismiss this case against you, Mayor Adams, and we want you to help the Trump administration, but we can rebring this case anytime we please because, as we said, the evidence is strong and we are moving to dismiss it without prejudice, meaning we can re-indict you at the drop of a hat. And then
just basically own him at that point?
Own him. Do you think he will do everything and anything the Trump administration wants him to do so he can avoid being re-indicted?
Of course, without a doubt. Well, look, we will stay on top of this issue, not only to discuss what happens with Eric Adams, but also this growing revolt from within Trump's own Department of Justice, his own administration, among these prosecutors, career civil servants who are not taking what he's having them do lying down, especially as it relates to these class action lawsuits that we're seeing more and more of. So for those who are watching right now, if you want to follow along as this continues to play itself out, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.